This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelcastans. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelcastans have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke, let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 43, Rites of Passage. Welcome to episode 43 of the Zettelcast. And your host today, in absentia, is Deb. So Deb it has some personal stuff she's taken care of today, but she created an assignment for us. She did the assignment herself. And like Deb is often wont to do, she gives us hard assignments. So here, this was her assignment. It's a Roanoke assignment. And, I think that we'll probably find that our plus ones are participating in this assignment as well. Although Nadia Z, at least in my case, is going to be playing catch up. So I'm just going to read her thoughts about it. Basically, the assignment would be to conjure up a Roanoke story that's a foundational rite of passage into adulthood for young Lydians. It's also the precursor for getting married and revolves around spending time in the write-up room, where candidates flesh out their visions of the future and how they might want to live it. That write-up is input to a holodeck-like theater interface, which serves as the way each life vision is shown and graded/commented upon by the community at large. Only those with visions that pass muster get to go on and do adult things, since they will have proven they are willing to think things through. So, who wants to respond or share a story or whatever you got?
Well, Deb left her story, so since she proposed the challenge, why don't I start by reading her story?
Excellent. Yes, that's a great way to procrastinate on reading our own.
It's called Peter Pan Me by Deb Hart. In the write-up room, you're on your own to choose your life vision, your own approach from 3. Wonder who came up with these roads anyway. Peacock Protocol, Swan Strategy, Prism Pathway. Yeah, we got prepped, had access to Central Henge, our parents, neighbors, and friends. But what do these roads really look like? Peacock Protocol? Yeah, that's as typically male as Swan Strategy is female. But that Prism Pathway, being both or neither one, is still hard to grasp. Yet, somehow that's where I'm drawn. I want to protect and be protected too. Why must it be one or the other? Can't they be different flavors of the same things, like ice cream? A nicely nuanced life, that's what I want, with plenty of room for growth and travel and reading and writing while still keeping up with practical things. Stuff like everything from housework to nightly bedtime stories. But what does the framework for that look like? How much time do I spend talking about ceiling suspended chairs that only come down for guests? Or on the both hands rule I believe in so deeply? Yeah, that handedness stuff's a brain killer. All hands used for all things. Absolutely. Down with dominant hand considerations. That's not for me. Time lies to me anyway, pushes my soul. A puzzle, an unknown picture. That write-up room looms inescapably. I am not ready. I want to play for fun, not adult prep. My mother's breast fills me still. Replace her? Be her? No, not yet. I am not ready. No wisdom runs in these veins. Who am I to advise, to lead, to trailblaze? Toward what end? No, please. Peter Pan me now.
I love the journey of that.
Yeah. Yeah, she really captures a lot of the kind of the challenge of it and the fear of going into adulthood that is often present in any kind of rite of passage.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that since we've written short bits, probably what we'll be doing is sharing our short bits and then sharing our thoughts about the challenge at large. So I'll go ahead and read my short bit since you just read, and then you can read your short bit. So my little story is called Passing Through, and it takes place during a kind of a lunch break at this buildup in the opening sequence. After helping herself to one more cookie, Cassie wandered over to where a few of her nephew's schoolmates were still picking at the remnants of lunch. She scooched between two of the older girls and said, "Your 21st is coming, right, Penny? Which rite are you taking on?" With a practiced shrug, Penny said, "Well, I'm still not sure, but I'm leaning toward deprivation. I hear that it's nice, really nice." Cass raised a subtle eyebrow and said, "Yeah, I've heard the same. I don't know why people call it that. Maybe you'll tell me when you're done." Penny shrugged again. Sure, no problem." From his spot a few yards away, Sonny called over, "Hey, Pen, I see you coming in and out of the walk all the time. How can you stand that place?" Penny said, "You mean the so-called walk of shame?" Sonny nodded. Penny tossed her chin back. "Well, I had to get used to that one. For some reason that I'll never understand, my parents thought it was a good idea to live where the walk is the best way to get to anywhere anyone would want to go. I could do it with my eyes closed." Bertie smiled. "Maybe you might try it that way sometime." Dylan shuddered and said, "Yeah, it's a whole other level."
Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, I'll read mine, and mine kind of presumes that that the people that are going to be coming up with their challenge have an opportunity to use the room in practice. They don't have to do just once and done. They get to try things out. And so here mine begins. Teresita knew about the existence of the write-up room. Everyone did, but she'd never been in there. Now someone who was leaving was holding the door open for her. So she went in. The door closed behind her. She was excited because of the mystery feeling that went with the name of the room, but it was just an empty space. Walls, a floor, a ceiling, illuminated as so many public spaces are by a light lacking a describable source. She found herself pondering where the light did come from. Then she noticed the ceiling rolling up like an awning taken in, a roll that gradually grew as more of the ceiling cloth, as she now could see it was made of cloth, got rolled up. Then she took her eyes off the rolled up ceiling and was startled by what was exposed. Tiny lights were set in metallic channels. The word aluminum came through the link clearly. Aluminum? Teresita replied out loud. Aluminum, the link said more slowly, and now she realized it had a child's voice and that it was speaking directly to her in a vow. Teresita tried again. Amuninimum? The child in the link laughed and spoke the word again. Just as Teresita was starting to get it, the door of the write-up room opened, and the boy who was scheduled to be there entered. "What are you doing here?" he vowed at her loudly. Teresita scurried out of the room, noticing as she left that the ceiling cloth again covered the tiny lights in their aluminum channels. "Aluminum!" Teresita rejoiced as she nearly skipped down the hall. "Aluminum! Aluminum!"
I love it. I wonder who's speaking with her.
What?
Well, this is the part where I confess that I didn't do the writing assignment, but I'm here to discuss anyway.
So, yeah, I have pages and pages of notes about this.
Ooh.
And it starts with kind of a disagreement on that that this would be a structure of things. And so I'll just read some of my notes. So the whole notion of the community at large, I put, well, presumably this is a particular community, not the entire world. The world accommodates cultural differences. And that's not a problem per se, but the rite, as she described it, would be specific, if there is such a thing, to a particular group and society that adopted it. Now, I get down into this got very dark, and I'm not necessarily going to go to all of the dark places. But, starting with it's not dark yet. Every Ling who came to the planet to play the game operates at the same relative disadvantage. Parents don't hold any particular wisdom that the kids don't have either. The parents are as much thrown into mystery as anyone. This is not Earth.
Yeah.
And there may or may not be a game that is affecting their lives. So whoever establishes rules that gatekeep adult privileges is assuming leadership that they may or not have established. To that previous point, imagine a dropout or a failure of this challenge. They could conceivably still do whatever they want, like declare themselves wedded. Who would stop them? This would again require some degree of control by some people over something that the dropouts would need. There needs to be some leverage. If Lydia were a harsh planet to live on, such measures as shunning or outcasting might be necessary and certainly possible for the overall group survival. But what do you do when the environment is not harsh? And so I started exploring, well, there may be some leverage in knowledge. Knowledge, once again, ascending to a kind of power. And if we think about Lynn Kelly's work in actually her whole body of work, especially in I want to say not memory craft. I forget the name. I'm forgetting the name of her other memory book. That's kind of about the history with the henge. But she really is detailing where knowledge was power, and then wealth and physical force became power more when everybody civilized into groups and they started relying on somebody for something, right? So if this is a kind of just a nice place to live, knowledge might become a kind of power again. And so perhaps access to linked knowledge might be limited. And if all became dependent on it, which is not a great thing already that some of the people are worried about, but if everybody was in some way dependent on the linked knowledge and an outcast who just chose not to or never did pass the adult privilege right, might literally not know enough to survive, but they could start figuring things out. They could start, reading information in a clandestine way or join some itinerant outcast society and take on that risk. And such societies would have their own rites of passage that might be more gang-like. So I was thinking, part of this is I was imagining that the Lings and Lydia might be kind of like the Mayans,
Mm.
where the living at the height of what they know of human civilization, utterly soft and vulnerable to conquistadors who would slaughter them in a heartbeat to take over the abundant planet.
Uh-huh.
So this is where it gets dark, right? They are unlike them in that they are aware of their vulnerability. How do they protect their way of life without destroying it in the process?
Ah.
And this would all be an imagined boogeyman fear when they're cut off, but how do they get intel about what is on the other side? Or if they don't, how do they plan to kind of respond wisely when some kind of brutality arrives to try to take away their way of life?
Mhm.
I mean, if it is a way of life that's worth defending, then it would need to be defended probably, because not only is Earth not Earth is a hostile environment, probably the entire universe is mostly a hostile environment. And the danger of everybody living in this place where everything is given is acedia, all
Mhm.
sorts of just ways of being that are not about growth.
Yeah.
And so I would say I'll just end with this. For me, the danger of this whole line of thinking is preachy judgment
Mhm.
of what I see as problematic and a little insane in today's society,
Mhm.
where, I mean, our standard of living is quite obviously much better
Mhm.
than what we evolved out of.
Mhm.
And yet there's plenty of suffering.
Yeah, crazy.
And so that's why, I mean, I think this is a hugely important challenge, and it's going to create a tension in the overall tone of the book, which is not a preachy book. I mean, how does it remain light
Mhm.
and fun and still have a message that is carrying? So she raised lots of questions in me, and I'm really glad that she did.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I didn't write anything, and I mean, the big reason is because my writing time is already spoken for at the moment. But the other big reason is because, like you said, there are different cultures. And so of the two characters that I'm working with, one of them comes from a different culture with a different, rite of passage, which is access to the link in the first place. Um, and the other one is completely out of any of the societies and living completely on the fringes and hidden. So, um, this particular assignment didn't really feel like it applied to either of them. Um, I think I might be able to offer some insight into how we can think about how control might happen on Lydia, which, as you say, is not a harsh planet. In the book 1493 by Charles Mann, I believe is the name of the author, it tracks how the New World plants and animals changed the societies that they were introduced in. So in Europe and in China,
Mm.
Asia, Africa, all over the place. And one of the insights I got from that book was that the specifics of whatever your main source of calories are determines to a large extent the specifics of what sort of government you have. Like if your main source is a grain that, like wheat, that requires almost as many people to process and grow the wheat as the wheat can feed, like wheat in Northern Europe, um, that requires a highly centralized and controlled group because everybody has to work together in order to eat. Wheat, it's not possible for a single person to go off and plant enough wheat and be able to process it to eat, to make enough for them to feed themselves. It requires a whole group of people working on it to even process it. But corn is a completely different story. A single person can go and plant and tend and harvest and process as much corn as they need to eat. Same thing with squash. Potatoes are the same way. Um, and so places that had dissidents who otherwise could not leave their main society because of the food source, once they got access to these things that they could plant and be self-sufficient nutritionally, they were out into the wilderness, they were feeding themselves. So what I'm saying here is that it seems to be that if there are food sources available that people can do individually or in very small groups and be able to feed themselves, that tends to promote a more egalitarian sort of situation. Because if people don't like what they're being told, they can just head out and find a new place. Whereas, I mentioned the wheat, and China had rice, which was only grown in certain places. It was extremely productive. So, the rice was grown in these particular places, was under central control, and then it was distributed. And then in the northern part, they had wheat, which had the same problems that I had already mentioned. So both the northern and the southern staple crops were very centralized in terms of control.
Hmm.
So yeah, and the Irish took to the potatoes so well because they could grow it, and
Yeah.
and in the soils that were much more marginal for wheat.
Yeah.
So it's easy to overlook how important food is because it's so ubiquitous, but the way you get your food determines to a large extent what sort of society you're able to live in.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And what society do we need to be able to get your food from a drive-through?
Right? Our food sources are highly specific. They're not necessarily centralized, but they're very specialized.
Yeah.
So most of us don't have anything to do with our food source
No.
other than going to the grocery store or the restaurant.
Yeah. That's interesting. I had sort of thought of the control aspect of this as being something more like um, being in a cotillion where the the parents are seeking to bring the child into society, whatever society is. And so then they would want their child to demonstrate in the write-up room that they had absorbed all of the niceties. They knew how to set a table properly, how to greet guests properly, how to be a good member of this self-described, self-congratulating upper class of people who, really, really did things right. And the rest of them look at them and say, all right, if it works for you, no problem.
I don't think I fully concluded what I was saying. With Lydia being such a not harsh planet, a gentle planet, I think that it would tend to promote a more of an egalitarian
Yeah,
situation,
yeah,
which is what we've largely been seeing in the characters that we've been writing and the stories that we've been writing.
Yeah.
I mean, the places where we've seen some issues are like with cis cleanup. It's largely self-imposed. She doesn't realize it's self-imposed, but that her isolation is self-imposed.
yeah.
She could be part of society.
Yeah. But I think I hope, I mean, the rites of passage that we can refer to from Earth are so much about preparing you for the difficulties of responsible life. And if the life is not inherently difficult, where I was heading with mine is that people will start seeking it. And the the place that I referred to as deprivation, it's actually a place where the only thing you're deprived of is any resistance to what you want.
Mm.
Oh, weird. Oh, that's strange. Oh, that's cool.
And I mean, you could imagine if you were able to indulge every whim, every whim, with no consequences, would you still feel consequences? I think such a such an exercise could be made that you do feel the consequences, but they're all internal.
Mhm.
You start, hopefully you emerge realizing that what you thought you want isn't what you want.
Yeah, yeah. And that the boundaries you need to set for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel that in my own, early retirement now,
Ah,
right? I can do whatever I want. And there's the risk that people often talk about of getting bored.
ah, yeah. Well, hang around LiLLiPub. We'll keep that from happening.
What?
Hang around LiLLiPub.
Yeah, yes,
Keep that from happening.
it will. It will. I'm not entirely worried about that, but it is a real concern.
Yeah.
Without the kind of pressure that I had as a wage earner, um, I have to make my own. I have to make my own schedule, and how am I gonna greet the evening feeling like I've lived a day well,
Yeah.
day after day after day.
Yeah. Yeah. Being retired, it's not an experience that I actually had the opportunity to share because my my work week just gradually got less. As I got fewer and fewer, got called upon less and less. My boss knew I wanted to retire, and so, when they needed me, they called on me, and then that just gradually faded into nothingness. And even when it was nothing, I didn't know whether they were going to call me any minute, until months had gone by. So I didn't get that experience of boom, the world is different now. So I'm fascinated by that experience. But haven't you felt it? I mean, you're into music, you're into fiction writing, you're into improving your memory. Are you do you really fear boredom?
I do all those things, I think, because I fear boredom.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that uh, I can't remember not fearing boredom.
Oh,
And I don't dwell in the fear, and I do things so that I'm not bored. And my mother was kind of the same way. She was, very proud. I'm never bored. And I'm
mhm.
never bored.
Yeah,
What if I were in a position where I couldn't do all these things? Then I would be facing something different.
yeah, yeah.
I had an uncle who, in the last few months of his life, was just very, very bored because he was kind of incapacitated.
Mhm,
And his wife had died previously, set like 6 months earlier.
mhm,
And it's like, how do we keep him entertained? It's just hard. And he'd been somebody very, energetic go-getter guy.
mhm.
And yeah, it's a difficult thing to face where just
Yeah,
being awake
yeah,
and passive.
yeah. Well, I I feel like I got a lifeline of sorts given to me in that domain. When I think back that my The punishment I feared the most as a child was being made to sit in a corner.
Mm.
Because if I really misbehaved, that would be my punishment. All right, you're gonna sit in the car. I'm gonna set a timer, and you're gonna stay there for 15 minutes and just I couldn't do anything for 15, that was just misery. But then when you're getting older, you think, well, what would become of you when you reach the age where what if you were just stuck in a situation where you really couldn't, you weren't capable of doing anything? But I don't fear that anymore because of you, Mel. I have all these topics on which I could do discursive meditation. And so I know that if I were ever stuck, I would just pick one, start working on it.
Yep. If your mind's free, you're free.
Yeah. And I finally, this past week, after thinking about it obviously for months, understand lull's three different kinds of beginning,
Mm,
and hence three different kinds of end, and hence three different kinds of middle. The first one is when you first get an inkling of building something, of creating something. It's just an idea in your head. And then the second one is when you begin its actual construction. Maybe you're making a tool. And then the third beginning is when it's now a tool and it begins to have its useful life. That ends when its useful life is over. But there was another ending that occurred the moment that it was ready for use, when it reached its perfection stage. That was an ending also. And then there's that other privation, which I couldn't understand for a long time. That's when even the memory of the thing winks out. So, I mean, when you've got stuff like that to think about, what's to fear?
that's true. I've read of people who had spent time in prison and spent time in solitary and spent the time visualizing, stories that they'd read, visualizing what their life was going to look like when they got out, and just constantly working on just this memory and visualization. And then when they finally did get out, went on to do good things. And
Mm.
because they hadn't just sort of rotted away in prison. They had been focusing their mind even when they're in, horrible conditions of like solitary confinement.
Mhm. So then where does this lead us with this rite of passage? Because we know that Deb isn't here to explain for us what she meant by this, but she does not seem to be in any way an elitist, such that she could be envisioning a cotillion, that the young adults have to prove that they're able to do it, right? Ooh, get your pinky in the air, don't you? Anything but. So, what would you think she might be having in mind for this?
I thought that I just read it as self-discipline, but maybe I am influenced by her own attempts towards self-discipline.
Okay.
You know, I wonder, I have no idea if this is what Deb is going for, but I wonder if it might work in the context of what we've already developed, if that the community approval is imaginary, in
Ah,
that what the participant thinks is community approval is really their own approval. Um,
I love
if you go into the write-up room and and you're not sure about your path, then if there's something inside of you that's saying this isn't right, then that's the answer they're going to get back from the community, the supposed community, which isn't really anything other than themselves. Um, and then, once they know, just have an idea that they are fully into, then they're ready. And then their community says, yes, go. Um, I could see that working. I don't know how Deb will feel about that, but I think she might like it actually. Um, I'm just thinking of, I don't know if anybody's read the Wheel of Time series, but there's there's a fun little sequence where there's one character who is in training to be a wise woman, right? And she's a very strong-willed character to begin with, but she's had to learn to do what the actual wise women do and do what she's told. And she's had training and training and training. And then they get to the point where she's being punished and she doesn't know why. And but she she's like, well, I don't understand it, so keep doing it, basically. Because I might be mangling it a bit. It's been a few years, but basically, this is her final test. And the way that she passes her final test is by saying, I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. I am as good as you. And then they're like, yes, you are. We were just waiting for you to say it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that feels very in keeping with the spirit of Roanoke in my mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, it's, we get in our own way.
Yeah.
Um, but I can imagine that there are going to be different parts of society. I'm thinking of, we all have science fiction references. Um, so the science fiction series Babylon 5, there's a very interesting race called the Minbari,
Uh-huh.
and they are divided amongst the warriors, the religious, and the workers.
Uh-huh.
And you choose your calling.
Uh-huh.
It's the calling of your heart. You choose the calling of your heart. And they are at odds with each other, but mutually dependent and support each other. And I could see I could see that needing to develop where, the religious people choose a soft and protected life, but they go deep into spiritual things and they face demons of a different sort.
Uh-huh.
And the warriors, on Lydia, it could be that they will have to invent some opponents.
Yeah. Interesting.
I do feel like some form of resistance is necessary, and that's why I think this challenge of Deb's, I love it. I hate it and I love it. I think it's necessary. I'm not sure I buy into you can't do adult things, because it's like, well, who says? But um the if we play out the ramifications of somebody who is known to not have passed their test,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
who are their likely marriage partners?
Yeah. Others who haven't passed the test, obviously.
Yeah. Or there might be people who are real kind of goody goody do-gooders who want to save others.
Yeah. I took a really, really different take on it. I took kind of a techno take on it with the sci-fi thing of the holodeck and saying, okay, because I was trying to relate it to Teresita, who only lives in the now. She doesn't have a conception of a future. So what is she going to do when she gets into a holodeck that has no visible controls? The people who come into the holodeck knowing that they're practicing their future have already learned that you control it with your imagination and that it will deliver up for you in quasi-physical reality that which you imagine. And so she's picked up on this idea that magical things happen in this room. And now that she's just kind of was, oh, here, let me hold the door for you. And she's suddenly in the room, what? She was just going down the hall. And she doesn't know how to operate, but she does. She operates it the way it's designed to work. She wondered. what's behind the ceiling? Why is the ceiling light? And so it answered it for her. So in a way, she was operating the holodeck just like all the others do, but she was operating it in the now. Where does that light come from now?
Yeah, I love it.
So it's the only thing I could think of, the only way I could think of to relate to her, because she's a very, what would she imagine for her future? She doesn't think about the fact that there's a future. She will when she starts making those Bezier belts.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think that's going to be a very interesting tension. The people who don't innately think about the future, that are thrust into a situation where that's a tool you need in some circumstances. But for a lot of people who are just all about worrying,
Yeah.
it's the tool has kind of overtaken them.
Yeah. It's the character trait of foresight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got nothing else. How about you? Anybody else? Oh, I do. I lied. I do have something else. A brief thing. So this kind of ties into some additional reading that I've been doing of Christopher Alexander.
Oh.
So he wrote a whole series of books. The Timeless Way of Building is kind of the philosophy that he's got to his book on the patterns, which is a very practical way of implementing the philosophy. It's not, he doesn't propose it as the be all and end all. This is what you get started with. Reading the Oregon Project, which is at the University of Oregon. Whether they have kept up with this, I don't know, because this was written in like 1970. And it was proposing a way to evolve the campus based on the previous failures of, so-called master plans that never do keep up with reality. But I believe it's in the Oregon Project, he talks about, and he mentions a book by John Larner, Culture and Society in Italy, 1290 to 1420.
Ooh. Share that one, please.
Okay. And his specific reference is about the city of Siena at the
Oh.
time that Dante lived there.
Oh.
And the city of Siena had a regular planning process for its own growth. The cathedral, other public spaces, the homes and everything. And it was akin to what Christopher Alexander proposes as the organic way of any kind of shared community to grow. And it starts with diagnosing what's the current problem.
Uh-huh.
And Dante participated as a citizen in this. What's wrong, what needs fixing, and then they had limited budget, but you propose something that um, is identified as a way to remediate a current problem and also work toward the accepted goal of where the city is going. And the way that the accepted goal of the way the campus of the University of Oregon is going is based on a set of agreed patterns. So he talks about it with both of these. It's not his ideal, because his ideal is more egalitarian. Whereas University of Oregon, it's a controlled budget, controlled by a few people, but it presents interesting problems. And one of the interesting problems is that it is the transience, that the students are part of the process, but what remains of what they've done is going to mostly be experienced by future students, not themselves. They're the best people to know what are the current problems right now and how they might fix them, but they're not there forever. They're there for 4 years. So I, taking that beyond building, which I do every time I read Christopher Alexander, I feel like building is a metaphor, even though it's real. I think it's not only real, it's also a metaphor for an ongoing way of being aware of the now, having the
Well,
future in mind,
yeah.
knowing that the future isn't real, and still having a goal to strive toward.
Wow. Then that's what's missing in this challenge, because it's all about imagining a future that isn't here yet, and we're missing the problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah,
And I think that if we added that to the challenge, then maybe it would just be maybe that would enliven this this Roanoke write-up room challenge. You
I
bring
don't.
good.
I'm sorry. I don't think it's an individual problem either.
No, it has to be a community problem, yeah,
Yeah,
that you want to solve. What problem have you identified in the community that you would like to be a part of solving?
yeah,
And how do you see your future self taking part in that? That
yeah,
would get it out of the judgmental realm.
yeah. And people would have to compromise on things,
Yeah,
which is healthy.
I love that. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm starting to feel I haven't gotten that book yet. I've got the first two, but I haven't purchased the one on the Oregon Project. And you're really motivating me to want to look at that because theoretically I should be able to get into my car and over the summer parking is so much easier at the university. When classes are in session it's almost impossible, but it'd be fun to just physically go there and poke around and see if I can discover whatever became of it. Does it still exist? Does anyone remember it? What did it do?
Yeah.
Where can we find traces of Christopher Alexander? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. I fear that it wasn't kept up with. That's just a fear. I don't know.
I don't know, but yeah, it seems quite probable that it wasn't, because things like that do go away. Especially when you consider, even in the first volume, when he was talking about the clinic, and everybody got so excited about working through how the clinic should really be, and they did the whole job of planning it out. And then it had to go through the permitting process and blueprinting process, and it just kind of
Yeah,
yeah, it was there, but all, the life was just kind of right angled out of it.
yeah, yeah. And his next project, well, yeah. I mean, with the Oregon project, he had gone through that experience,
Yeah.
so he wasn't caught unawares. And the book, the construction of, I think it's called The Construction of Houses.
Oh,
It's down in Mexico, building with the community. Very, 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 very low cost housing.
oh, wow.
And all the people are there,
Yeah,
building their own housing out of blocks.
yeah.
Um, so um, yeah, the modern world thinks it knows best.
Kathleen, your potential trip to the University of Oregon is kind of like your own Roanoke project, seeing what traces of Christopher Alexander you can find.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're our
yes,
scout.
yes. As a matter of fact, yes, we've kept his office pristine. Hardly anyone asks to go into it these days. I hear he kept a Zettelcast.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I don't know. I'm kind of a shy person, so that might live only in my memory. But in fact, when I realize that amongst all of us, I'm the one that, if I didn't mind a very long walk, I could go there on foot. I would,
Mm.
I'm a reasonable walking distance to the bike path that then avoids all roads and goes straight to the U of O campus.
You, you look like you bear a huge weight of responsibility there. You don't have to go.
I think I'd do some research first, but boy, it's just it's tantalizing.
Yeah. Yeah, you could also this is where I have read the book. At least um I've seen it there. You could get it at the open library where you're reading it online. It's not the most pleasant way to read a book, but a lot of his books are available that way. Somebody has scanned them from some other library, and you can the way they do things, you can read it for like 30 minutes at a time, and if you're still reading, you keep renewing. But it's a good way to at least sample a book.
Very interesting.
Okay.
So shall we remind everyone that
I
they
think so.
join us at lillipub.org. We have a Roanoke project group over there. You can pop in and check on what we're up to. You can contribute ideas and thoughts. So I'd love to see you over on lillipub.org. And if that isn't really your cup of tea, you can still come visit us at lillipub.org and sign up to be on the mailing list for any notifications. And you will get with that a link to where we post our public material and our stories that you can read yourself in the Roanoke Project area, even without joining LiLLiPub. So there's no reason not to come by and visit us at lillipub.org. And we will see you next week.
Yes, thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye-bye.